a clean heart, O Lord. Glory, praise, and honor to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, Lord.
As Jesus passed by, he saw a blind man from birth. The disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus answered, neither he nor his parents sinned. It is so that the works of God might be made visible through him. We have to do the works of the one who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. And when he had said this, he spat on the ground, made clay with saliva, and smeared the clay on his eyes, and said to him, go and wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. So he went, washed, and came back able to see. His neighbors and those who had seen him earlier as a beggar said, isn't this the one who used to sit and beg? Some said it is, but others said, no, he just looks like him. He said, I am. So they said to him, how were your eyes open? He replied, the man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and told me to go to Siloam and wash. So I went there and washed and was able to see, and they said to him, where is he? He said, I don't know. They brought the one who was once blind to the Pharisees. Now Jesus had made clay and opened his eyes on the Sabbath. So when the Pharisees also asked him how he was able to see, he said, he put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and I can see. Some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God because he does not keep the Sabbath. But others said, how can a sinful man do such signs? And there was division among them. So they said to the blind man again, what do you have to say about him since he opened your eyes? He said, he's a prophet. Now the Jews did not believe that he had been blind and gained his sight until they summoned the parents of one who had gained his sight. He asked them, is this your son who says he was born blind? Now, how does he now see? And the parents answered and said, we know this is our son and that he was born blind. We do not know how he sees now, nor we do not know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he's of age, he can speak for himself. His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone acknowledges him as the Christ, he would be expelled from the synagogue. For this reason, his parents said, he is of age, question him. So a second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, give praise to God. We know that this man is a sinner. And he replied, if he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know is that I was blind and now I see. So they said to him, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? He answered them, I told you already and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too? They ridiculed him and said, are you that man's disciples? We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but we do not know where this one is from. The man answered and said to them, this is what is so amazing, that you do not know where he is from, yet he opened your eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if one is devout and does his will, he listens to him. It is unheard of that anyone who can ever open the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he would not be able to do anything. They answered and said to him, you were born totally in sin, and are you trying to teach us? Then they threw him out. When Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, he found him and said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered and said, "Who is he, sir, that I might believe in him?" And Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he." He said, "I do believe, Lord," and worshipped him. Then Jesus said, "I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see might see, and those who do see might become blind. Some of the Pharisees who were with him heard this and said to him, "Surely we are not also blind, are we?" And Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you are saying, 'We see,' so sin remains." The Gospel of the Lord. The other day I was in Rite Aid, and I ran into a parishioner. In fact, his wife was right here, Barbara. And Greg and I met in the aisle, and we talked, and he said, "Father Tom," I said, "How you doing, Greg?" And he had a little tan. He said, "I've been down in Florida." And my wife, we decided to drive down to the Keys. And, you know, the Key West, okay, to the Keys. And they stopped in a place, and they got in a boat, and they went over a coral reef, and they saw, it was a glass bottom, and they saw beautiful coral. And fish, just beautiful. Now that story stayed with me as I was working on my reflection of the gospel. So I'm going to add my own story to it. So here we go. After they had that experience, they were stopped for something. They were talking to a man. And they were telling this man and his wife what they experienced on their trip. They could not believe what they saw, the beautiful coral, the fish, just beautiful. They were able to see it, I said, because there was a glass bottom in the boat. And the man said, "Where is it?" And they said, "Oh, it's about maybe 5 to 8 miles back this way. You got to go back." And so the man said to himself, "Well, we didn't see that sign. We didn't see it." They said, "Oh, just go back. You'll see it." Okay? So he went back to the sign. And he pulled in, and him and his wife got out, and they saw the place, and they were looking at the boat, and his wife did not like water. She didn't know how to swim. And so what happened, she said, "Maybe we should talk about it." So they went off for a little bit, they talked about it, and they came back, and they got in the boat. And they just had an unbelievable experience like Greg and Barbara did, seeing the coral and the fish, and it was just a beautiful experience, And then when they got off the boat, there was a sign off to the side a little bit. And the sign said, "Scuba diving." So they said to themselves, or at least the guy said to the wife, "Do you want to go scuba diving?" She said, "Honey, you know I don't swim. So why don't I sit and wait for you?" So he went and he changed, got in his bathing suit, got the snorkel, got the goggles, and he went in and he swam around the coral piece, saw the beautiful coral piece up front real close, touched it, and also he was just being with all the little fish around him. And he just had an unbelievable experience. So he came out of the water and he told his wife, he said, "I can't believe what I just experienced. It was amazing." They got in the car and they drove off. But then they stopped for something a little later. And they also, when they were there, they pulled in, there was another couple, and they just said, "Hi, how are you talking?" They said, "You won't believe it. It's an unbelievable place where you could see the coral, and it's amazing. A beautiful little glass boat, you could see the coral and the fish. And then the guy said, and if you want, you could even go scuba diving. Go in there with your snorkel and your glasses and have an unbelievable experience. Then they left the couple and drove off. Pretty good story? I made it all up, that piece. So let's look at it. One of the things that we all have to look at and struggle with spiritually is the question of spiritual sight. It's amazing, one of the little reflections in that little gospel, he said he didn't judge by appearance because he was able to read hearts, you know? So he's able to see oftentimes what we can't see. So one of the things that you have to look at, and you got to struggle with, is, do I see the working of God in my life? He loves me. If he loves me, because love is an action, you have to see it. If I said you and we were together, I said, honey, I just love you, but you don't see it, do I really love you? I don't show it, do I really love you? Well, I love you. Has to be seen. Love is tangible. It's a verb. It's an action, you know. It's not just an emotion. It has an emotional component to it, but the essence of love is doing something for somebody, okay? So when we say God loves me, he's doing something for me. So do I see what he's doing? So I want to take that little story I told you and frame it out for you. So maybe it might help you along that understanding of how to begin to start seeing God's in your life, okay? Barbara and Greg went to a place. And they went and they got on a boat. And it was a glass bottom. And they were able to see the coral island, the coral pieces. If they weren't going to get in the boat, they would not be able to see it. So they got in, they saw it, it was beautiful, you know. So what does that practically mean? Spiritually, you have to learn what they call rear view mirror looking and where God is working. So you have to look at the rear view mirror in your spiritual life, especially if you're not able to see it in the present. What does that mean? It means very simply that you got to look back into experiences in your life where you said to yourself, I can't do this anymore, or experience in your life where you said, I can't believe how hurt I am. I don't know how I'm going to get over it, you know. So the rear view mirror is you're in the present, but you're now looking back at your life and saying, how did I get through all this? It wasn't me, it was something greater than me. And so all of a sudden, you felt you were carrying a tremendous burden, weighing you down. It was almost killing you. You could feel the anxiety, you weren't feeling well. And all of a sudden, you felt a strength inside you to continue to journey, to continue to walk. That was God's strength. Because whenever you deal with suffering, whenever you have to stand in suffering, when life comes in on you like the winds and blows against you pretty hard and takes you down and out, all your relational energy to reach outside of yourself is used up just relating to the suffering inside of yourself. It's just relating to that. So you don't have much left to do too much. I've never met, and I shared that with before, I've never met a strong person who was suffering on my 40-something years of a priest. They take credit for something that they're doing, but it's not really them. It's God themselves, but they're unaware of it, who's given them the strength. Did you ever care for an aging parent or a sick parent? Did you ever care for some sick children? Did you ever actively seek to care for, run a house, really try to love and do that? And you get empty because the only thing besides suffering that empties you is love. And you say to yourself, I just can't do this anymore. I'm tired. This is getting a little bit too much. And all of a sudden you feel a movement inside you, a burst of love inside you that is something filling you. And you all of a sudden you realize it's God's love that's filling me. It's God's love that's helping me love. It's God's somehow filling me, my emptiness, so I can continue to reach out in love, you know? Did you ever get whacked by life, hurt deeply by life, by another person? I know George is with us. He lost 2 children, you know? And did you ever just had to stand in something that really just hurt? And that temptation is to want to strike back, or is to keep it away from you. Just keep it away from you. It was God's grace that allowed you to forgive. It was God's wonderful healing power that began to heal the hurt. So those negative feelings that were percolating pretty heavily about whoever did it, or life itself, or yourself because you hurt yourself, they begin to subside a little bit. It's not your ability to do that. It's God's power of love, healing you, giving you the grace not to make someone pay. Also, it's His power of healing that all of a sudden you begin to feel free from those negative feelings that were just overwhelming you towards that person or towards life itself, you know. He was working in that. Did you ever really mess up? Just mess up. You did something stupid. If you haven't, please go do it. Because you want to experience God's mercy, not the little ones. Good. Because what happens? It's His forgiveness. His forgiveness. He says, I don't need you to beat yourself up. I don't need you to carry around guilt. I don't need to have you self-loathing of yourself. I'll forgive you. Just give that forgiveness away. So we could go on and on and on how God is actively working in your life. But the first step in an act of faith, most of us have to look at the rearview mirror and say, oh, this is how He was working back here, okay? This is what He was doing back here for us, okay? So if you have a hard time saying I could experience God in the present, I don't know what that looks like. Myself gets too much in the way. Begin in faith to look at the rearview mirror to see how He's working. And stop giving you credit for all the stuff that you didn't do. Stop giving yourself credit for it. The only credit you should give is, I made an act of faith, so I could begin to see in the rearview mirror. Just like Barb and Greg, they got in the boat. If they didn't get in the boat, they would not have seen, okay? And they saw through a glass bottom, okay? So at least make an act of faith. Lord, help me to see in the rearview mirror. And as you're doing that over a period of time, I want you to begin to say, Lord, help me to see today. Help me just to slow down a little bit to begin to see how you're working in my life today. And I find sometimes it's good to do a little review at night. Say, Lord, where were you today in my life? I'm looking at where I was empty, where I was hurt, where I was overwhelmed. Those are the places I have a tendency to want to look to see, because that's most tangible, most real to me, you know. So make that act of faith. Say, Lord, help me to see today what you're doing in my life. Once you start looking in the rearview mirror and it leads you into seeing today where He's working, because He loves you today. He loves you tremendously today. And He's already worked unbelievable in your life today. Already worked. And then, once you start recognizing that, something's going to happen to you naturally. One is you're going to begin to have a gracious heart. You're going to begin to see how much God is a gift to you. You're going to want to thank Him. The Eucharistic prayer, Eucharist, will come alive, because the word Eucharist means to give thanks. In all things you will give thanks to God, because no matter what happens, No matter how crazy it is, you're going to be always thanking him for him, because why? Every situation, every event in my life is an opportunity to see his power and his glory, okay? So begin to do that. Start with the rearview mirror. Go out in the boat. But when you experience yourself, when you put the little goggles on and you put the little, what's that? What? And my brain went blank. Snorkel, okay. When you put the goggles and snorkel on, that's when you now see in every day the experience of it. So you saw the beauty in the rearview mirror as they saw the beauty under the glass boat. But when you now go into the water and you experience the water and just see it up front, it's just an amazing experience. Again, you're going to have a gracious heart. Just going to start being very gracious. And one of the things that's going to take place in your spiritual journey, you're never going to lose hope. You're never going to fall off the cliff in despair. Yeah, you'll be sad, you'll be depressed, but it will never bring you to the edge where you feel life is not worth living. And therefore, you're never going to do something crazy in order to somehow cope with what's going on in your life or deal with it. Because why? Look how God has loved me in the past. I've seen it in the rearview mirror. Look at how he's helping me right now. I'm experiencing it every day. And if he's doing it yesterday, today, he will do it for me tomorrow, no matter what happens. No matter what happens, he's going to be there to love me, to be for me, to take upon my suffering, and to walk with me in my journey of life. So I'm going to have this unbelievable sense of hope. No matter what happens, it's going to work out for the good, because I've seen how it's worked out in my journey in my life with him. Okay? Then last but not least, you're going to have a Pharisee in your head. What was the Pharisee doing? They were unable to see. And they were trying to tell the young man who was healed of blindness, this is crazy. This is crazy. So that Pharisee in your head is going to tell you, don't believe it. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. It's not real. You're making it up. And you got to do this yourself. So you got to say to the Pharisee, do me a favor. I love you very much, Pharisee. But get out of my face and get lost. You got to be real with the Pharisee in conversation. Because if not, the Pharisee will undermine your belief and your willingness to see the working of God in your life. We all got a Pharisee inside us that's trying to undermine our faith, trying to undermine our inability to recognize Jesus Christ as who he is. The Son of God that broken into the human story dwells within me, and he's there to help me to walk this journey with a great sense of living and loving. Enjoy the boat. Please stand.